Good morning. Thanks for being with me today for devotions. Today's reading, as we're going through the book of Deuteronomy, is Deuteronomy chapter 4. I'm going to start in verse 35 today. Moses says to the Israelites, "To you it was shown, so that you would acknowledge that the Lord is God, there is no other besides him. From heaven he made you hear his voice to discipline you. On earth he showed you his great fire while you heard his words coming out of the fire. And because he loved your ancestors, he chose their descendants after them. He brought you out of Egypt with his own presence by his great power, driving out before you nations greater and mightier than yourselves, to bring you in, giving you their land for a possession, as it is still today. So acknowledge today and take to heart that the Lord is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. There is no other. Keep his statutes and his commandments, which I am commanding you today, for your own well-being and that of your descendants after you, so that you may long remain in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for all time." There's a bit of context that needs to go into this passage. Of course, that God delivered the Israelites from Egypt. There were those 10 plagues, and finally Pharaoh let the people go. And this was a miraculous sign. It was accompanied by the first Passover, when God protected the children of the Israelites, but not so the children of Egypt, and let the people out into the wilderness. They crossed the Red Sea when Pharaoh's army was chasing them. This was obvious to the people. It had faded a bit into story. Perhaps the newborn children didn't quite remember things, and then passed it on to their children as they wandered in the wilderness. But nevertheless, this was something within recent memory of the people. God's power was relatively obvious. And yet Moses feels this need to remind them, don't forget this history. And again, we're reminded of the scholars who believe that this is probably the writing down of oral tradition that had been passed on for many, many generations, hundreds and hundreds of years, and was written down by people in the exile as they were wondering about the future of their nation. And so they're remembering God's love for their ancestors and God's love then for the descendants of those beloved ancestors. They're remembering God's power that was so obvious. And they're reminding people that Moses calls them to acknowledge God, to acknowledge that there is no God besides God, which makes sense to us. If God is the creator of heaven and earth, if everything around us, matter itself, came into being, we worship the one who made it come into being. We worship that primal cause, who then we know by these stories loves us and wants to relate to us. Moses also says to the people to keep God's statutes and commandments for your well-being, for the well-being of your descendants, and so that you may remain in the land, so that you may hold on to the blessings God is giving you. It's not that God is going to revoke the promise. It's that we're going to revoke our claim on it. And so the laws, the ordinances, the things that we ask each other to do in church, the things that we encourage one another to do, the reason that we try to do what is right, is not so that God will bless us, so that we can hold on to the blessings God gives us. Jesus comes to all of us and offers us new life. The ball is in our court to accept it, to understand it, to realize it, and to live it out. And God's blessings being present for us is as true for the Israelites then as it is for us still today. Would you join me in prayer? God, you receive all of us sinners, asking only that we turn from death toward life. Today we choose life wherever we find a stranger and welcome her. Amen. Have a blessed day.